Our next guest is a basketball icon in the coaching world, and besides coaching young athletes, Chris Meadows, he's also an author, and he has a new book, I Am D1, that, while teaching his players the value of hard work and sacrifice, he does so by keeping focused on his faith and on God through the whole process. Chris, welcome to Hope Today.
Hey, it's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm enjoying the show so far.
Well, great. I'm glad you are. Well, tell us a little bit about your story. How'd you get involved in coaching, potential D1 athletes? How did that come about?
Well, what's interesting is that just growing up, I don't think I can remember a part of my life where some sort of sport was not an integral part of my daily life. So, growing up, and I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. And so sports had such an integral part of not only my life, but the relationships that I had. And it's interesting to hear you talk about, the confidence that you have in God and those things, because growing up for me, I grew up where, since I could remember, being in worship, God was a big part of me. So even when I didn't necessarily walk closely to God was always a part of who I was because of just how I was raised. So sports was something that I always tell players when I talk to them, when I speak around the country. Basketball didn't save my life, but it definitely changed my life. And so I always say it's a tool. It's a master key. I met the person who I'm married to now, while I was playing college basketball. So it just gave me a lot of things. It gave me opportunities, and it gave me some opportunities that I probably would not have had if it were not for basketball itself.
Yeah, it really does. It really it is so much a great learning experience for so many young people. In fact, tell us about your daughter. She's still playing college basketball, right?
Yes, she is. It's been a blessing. Her name is Courtney, and she worked extremely hard growing up. She's not very big. She's only 5'3", and so to play at a Division I level, at a pretty high level, it took a lot of sacrifice. The things that she gave up, as she was growing up, it was her passion, and so obviously she's seen it. She'd been around it. She played other sports, but as she probably got into middle school, she really wanted to be exclusively focused on basketball, and so we had a routine that it required a lot of discipline. Every morning we were up like 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd be in the gym before school, after school, and she played travel basketball. So we traveled to Atlanta every spring and summer for her to practice and play with her team. And as she got older, it's sort of like a pyramid. The better players continue to stay in at the top. And it was a blessing. She received a scholarship to play at Georgetown University in D.C., and she played there her freshman year, and then she transferred to High Point University, where she is now, which is about an hour from Charlotte. And she had a great experience. Last year, due to COVID-19, they played in Charlotte. They played in San Antonio, Texas. The tournament was held there, and they played against the Hall of Fame coach Gino Auriemma, UConn, in the first round. And obviously, they didn't win, but it was a great experience. And so she's currently a Division I player, and she graduates this year as well.
What are some of those common factors that will take somebody from being average to extraordinary?
That's a great question. What's interesting is that we have many athletes and parents who read the book who are not basketball players at all, because these principles apply to life. And some of the factors that I think are common, it's a true dedication and a true sacrifice to what they're seeking. And also, it takes what I see that's a common thread across the continuum with athletes and even young people in general, is that those who have a passion for something, they are self-driven. So what I love about it is I have some different parts of the book where I would say a large part of it is even for parents. One of the keys that I've learned from being overly competitive, like you as a parent, it's become Sometimes I would say parents are more driven than their kids can be. So I have a chapter that's called The Ride Home. And, I talk directly to parents about how you can really draw closer to your kids and even encourage them more when they fail, when they don't play well, or when things don't go well, because they might expect you to be more critical at that time. So when you ask a question about young people, what I see as common is I see, even when they don't have the confidence, the the ability to continue to work. Like I have, when we talk about a D1 mindset, and that's something that can be used regardless if you play Division 2, Division 3, NAIA sports, or if you don't play sports at all. I use 4 C's to we learn how to compete, which says that your competition is your potential. It's not an opponent. So you want to maximize your potential. And I think the Bible talks a lot about that. Like I can do all things through Christ. Like maximizing what God has given you, like the talents, the parable of the talents. Make the most of what you have. And then the next one is to be consistent. So any young person who's going to be successful, they need to be consistent. Like every day you have to go after it. And then that leads to confidence. I think confidence comes from your consistency. And then when you're confident, I think Tom may have mentioned it earlier. The last part of that is the last C, which is composure. When you're prepared, you're composed. You're going to be so confident that you can be calm in the midst of the storm because you prepared. So I think those are all components that go across life, not just sports.
What are some things that we can apply to our lives, or things that you even learned through basketball when you do lose a game, about how important it is to get back up and get in the game?
Thanks for that question, Sydney. For me, I think my passion is, like, I love working with young people, even if they're pros that I work with, because it's all about how you respond. I think there's a saying that says it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. So I think with young people, allowing them to see that, I think you can grow from those situations where maybe you get knocked down. I don't think it's about like the exact experience, but I think it's about what happens after that. How do you respond to that? I have players that I work with, and I'll go see them. They could be down. They play in front of a college coach, and maybe they didn't play well, and they don't think the coach's going to recruit them anymore. And what I always share with them is, how do we grow from it? And one thing that I share is, I don't think any of us in life are really in control of the results. And when you can let go of the results and you can say, I'm going to control what goes into the results and the preparation for life, and then that takes the stress off of young people, because a lot of times they're so focused on the results, and no matter how much you prepare, the results are not always in your control. And so allowing them to realize that portion of it, and then it takes away the anxiety that a lot of young people face, because the work always wins out over time.
Chris, there are some great principles. You mentioned ride home and the whole story you have in here about the father that was going to be kind of critical towards his son, and other people were encouraging them even though they had lost the game, and he learned something from that. But you have something else you call next play mentality, and this has always amazed me about elite athletes. Most of us, we miss 5 shots in a row. We think, I'm not touching that basketball anymore. But the next play mentality, talk about that and how that can propel you to have success even when you've had adversity.
It's amazing. Next play mentality, to me, it really goes back to your mindset. And I think a lot of young people, even a lot of adults, don't have naturally a next play mentality. So I'm so big on it because growing up, my father was very optimistic. And I had an older brother who was very positive. Like he kind of gave me an advantage, I would say, mentally, because he was just so positive with everything he taught me. And I see so many young people that it's amazing. I was watching a game a few months back, and there was a player who made a mistake and just stared at their parents. And this is a high school varsity game with, elite level athletes. And it's almost like the player was paralyzed for 3 to 4 seconds. And so other things happened, which if the player would have stayed in the moment, they could have corrected the mistake, but it kind of compounded it because they were looking for approval from their parents or, just some validation maybe. But when you say next play mentality, I think that's about life. So if things don't go according to plan, we have to continue to move forward, and that's what I get young athletes to understand. Your next play can't be determined off of your last play because you can't get it back. So we have to stay positive and we have to keep going because you may miss 10 shots in a row, but it's about the one you make. It might be to win the game. So if you can stay positive, if you can continue to move forward, you keep yourself in a position to have success. And we don't get stuck on what didn't go right. We just continue to adjust, but we move forward. And then that way they stay in the moment and they stay optimistic, they stay positive. And that's, I think that's the championship. That's what I call the D1 mindset.
That is so good. I remember Michael Jordan saying that in his career he took 51 last-second shots and missed. And so, but of course, the success he had growing from that. The book's called I Am D1. Chris, there are so many principles in here. Real quick, we just have 10 seconds. Who's going to win March Madness? Who's going to win the tournament this year?
Oh my goodness, you put me on the hot seat here.
Well, give me a favorite. Give me at least one you'd like to see win.
I would like, I don't know, I'm in the Carolinas, but I'm from Arizona. But I think, honestly, there may be a team that we don't expect this year. It's a lot of parity. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Baylor or maybe it would be sentimental to see Coach K win it in his final year, too, for Duke.